Good evening, everyone. I think I know everybody. If not, I'm Swami C, up from Hollywood for a few days. There's always a beautiful prayer in here that Ramakrishna prays to the Divine Mother, so I'm sure it's been prayed many times. I want to share it, though, and pray it. O Mother, I throw myself on your mercy. I take shelter at your hallowed feet. Be gracious and grant that I may have pure love for you, a love so unsmitten by cravings for earthly things, a love untainted by any selfish end, a love desired by the devotee for the sake of love alone. And grant me the favor, O Mother, that I may not be deluded by your world-bewitching Maya. There is no one but you whom I call my own. Mother, I don't know how to worship. I'm without austerity. I have neither devotion nor knowledge. Be gracious, Mother, and out of your infinite mercy, grant me love for your lotus feet. All right, if you remember last week we were reading a hymn that kind of was talking about the progress of life, and he ended every stanza with a begging of forgiveness for all of the wrongs that he had committed and all the times that he had wasted and all the things that he hadn't done that would have grown his devotion and would have given him strength in his older age. And it looks like, I was smiling a bit here, we're going to continue playing hardball today. And some of the more shocking things or more difficult teachings are right here in a row for us. So with Thakur's blessing and permission, we dive in here. After the hymn, Narendra and M talked again. Narendra, you may speak of leading a detached life in the world and all that, but you will not attain anything unless you renounce woman and gold, or lust and greed, as we like to. Don't you feel disgusted with your wife's body? Fools enjoy the contact of the body, filled with filth, peopled with worms, foul of smell by nature, made of flesh, blood, bone, and marrow. But the wise shun it. I love this description and this discussion, one, because it's so contrary to what we want to hear, because we love our bodies and we love ourselves. And to hear it described this way, immediately the mind wants to argue about it. But in fact, it's true. I mean, if it wasn't for our constant scrubbing and scraping and clipping and cutting and fixing, bathing and dressing, the body does nothing but get more and more vile. But that's not what we like to see. That's not what we want. And so we continue with the dressing and the polishing and the clipping and the cutting and the trimming, the bathing, which I encourage you to continue with that. That's not not a cry for that kind of renunciation. But to understand the troubles that this body causes us by identifying with it. You know, the real freedom that Vedanta offers is a seeing of the truth, seeing the way things are, and knowing that the body really has nothing to do with you. That if you wanted to take the ideas of reincarnation, you've had many of them in a row, and you've abandoned all of them. And you'll abandon this one. You know, old age to me has always been one of the best signs of grace from the divine. Because we would never let go of this old rag, right? But Mother has to go, and look what she has to put us through in order to get us to let go. I mean, she has to shrivel it up, you know, and make it sick, and make it hobble around, make it so it can't stand up straight, it doesn't sleep right, you know, none of the functions are in order. And finally, when it's just absolutely impossible to drive it even 5 more feet, we throw up our hands, move out, abandon it, and move on with life. And M and Narendra here are understanding, Narendra in particular, Swami Vivekananda, saying you can talk about a detached life, but without renunciation of the body, renouncing this identity of self with these things that are temporal, these things that are so small and in the end ultimately ridiculous, that we have to let go of these things. You have to move beyond this. Not for any other reason than it's just not true. There's nothing there. The body and the mind are ultimately unreal, constantly changing until they dissolve and turn into garden plants or the grass in the cemetery, whatever comes next for these pieces and parts. He says, vain is the life of a person who does not take delight in the teachings of the Vedanta and drink the nectar of divine bliss. Listen to a song. Narendra sings, O man, abandon your delusion. Cast aside your wicked counsels. Know the Lord and free yourself from earthly suffering. For a few days' pleasure only, you have quite forgotten him who is the comrade of your soul. Alas, what a mockery! No liberation is possible for a man unless he puts on the loincloth of a sannyasi. The world must be renounced. Narendra sang from the 5 stanzas on the glory of the monk's loincloth. Roaming ever in the grove of Vedanta, ever pleased with his beggar's morsel, ever walking with a heart free from sorrow. Blessed indeed is the wearer of the loincloth. So he's going on here, and I know in modern day America we want to be body positive, and we want to be gender neutral, and we want to be, have all of these ideas that sort of seem the antithesis to this. And they're not. There is a unity to it. There is a way to bring them together. And that's through renunciation, through the knowing that this body is not you, that this mind is not you. And Thakur says, Ramakrishna says, when you get to the roof, when you make it to that level of renunciation, where you know firmly the distance and difference between you and the body, between you and the mind, he says, then you get the perspective, that divine perspective, and you can see God in this world, in this manifestation, in this play of illusion. And then you see the beauty. And then you can enjoy the depth and the wonder of it. Why? Because you know you don't need anything from it. Why? Because you cease to be hungry. You cease to be thirsty for more. You see, the favor that the Beloved is doing for us here in painting our bodies as these vile, stinky pieces of trash is to try and get us to loosen our grip on them, because they are the source of our misery, the source of our constant need, the source of our insecurity and fear, the fear of death, the fear of non-existence, the fear of lacking love. You see, a fear of all the things that are, in fact, God. A fear of the things that are not God, as exhibited by the body, like this idea that God is eternal, but we're in a body that's not. And so we fear being non-eternal. Fearing pain, knowing in the divine is contentment and bliss. In the body is a constant hunger, a constant insecurity in the mind. Because we know this immortality, we know this infinity. There is no other way that we could have known it unless it was our nature, because the world and our experience has never presented us with anything infinite. We could not have learned infinity from the finite world. We could not have learned of our immortality from Maya, from this world that we live in, where nothing is immortal. Nothing lives without expiration. And so the divine is trying to bring our light of awareness, our understanding to the fact that we have all that we dream of. We have all that we long for. And the only reason we don't enjoy it and don't take comfort and refuge in it is because we're not looking at it. We don't recognize it. We don't see it. Primarily because of the ego, that chemical reaction that happens when the divine spirit touches the material body, touches the material mind. That little interaction, that little sealing of that relationship creates that little buzz called the ego. And that ego prevents us from understanding, prevents us from seeing and enjoying the constant sense of bliss that arises in silence. It blocks it by never allowing that silence to come into our awareness, to come into our understanding. That we're constantly engaged with the buzzing motions of the mind, constantly engaged with serving the body, doing all of those things we started talking about, washing and primping and cleaning and hiding the imperfections and trying to take off a few years, here and there. All of these things. Really great fun if it wasn't causing us so much pain. So he sings this song from Shankaracharya's 6 stanzas on Nirvana. He says, continuing, Narendra said, why should a man be entangled in worldliness? Why? Why should we do this? Why are we doing this? Why should he be ensnared by Maya? What is man's real nature? He is the blessed Shiva, the embodiment of bliss and spirit. That's a great start for a meditation right there. You have just been called by Swami Vivekananda the very embodiment of bliss and spirit. That's yours to experience. That's yours to understand and yours to find. To become the very embodiment of bliss. A constant song of joy that sings within. Because you, like everything that you're witnessing around, are a direct manifestation of the beloved. That this witness of your own mind is none else than the deepest and greatest love that you've ever known in life. Narendra recited another hymn, the 8 stanzas on the glory of Krishna. I am consumed with false desire and wrapped in the sleep of lust. Save me, O Madhusadana. Thou art my only refuge, Lord. I have no other salvation. I am entrapped in the mire of sin. O redeem me, Lord. I am ensnared in the net of love for children, for wife, and for a home. Save me, O Madhusadana. I am without devotion. I am helpless. I am smitten by wrong desire, afflicted with grief and with misery. O Madhusadana, redeem me. Lord, I have neither master nor place of shelter to call my own. Save me, O Madhusadana. Utterly wearied out am I by all this going and coming along this endless road of life. O Madhusudana, redeem me. From this hard and unavailing journey through life and death, save me, O Madhusadana. Many the births that I have seen in many a bodily form, and painful it is in the mother's womb. O Madhusudana, redeem me. To you I have come for salvation out of the cycle of existence. Save me, O Madhusadana, for I am terrified alike of old age and of death. I come to you for shelter, Lord. O Madhusudana, redeem me. Never a good deed have I done, but many have been my wrongs. Save me, O Madhusudana. Headlong have I fallen into the mire of worldliness. Countless the births I have endured. O Madhusudana, redeem me. I have lorded it over men, but happiness, it was not there. Save me, O Madhusudana, that my words have promised, what my words have promised, my deeds have never carried out. Lord, I am full of wretchedness. O Madhusudana, redeem me. If as a man or a woman I must be born again and again, save me, O Madhusudana. May my devotion be unswerving to your feet, O Lord. From the delusion of this world, O Madhusudana, redeem me. So what is this delusion of the world that's causing so much trouble, that's causing so much suffering here? This idea that we are separate and apart from the whole is the primary delusion, that we think that we're small and separate from everything else, and that in this separateness, our eternal soul is just longing to stretch out its arms, to feel and know that freedom. Our eternal intelligence, wanting to know and understand everything, all of it at once, constantly smelling this scent of something that's somewhere outside, we assume, under the delusion that it's not within, that it's not who we are, that there isn't a oneness here, that that which has been infinite and has enjoyed its immortality, now confined to a small fleshly box that's slowly decaying from the day it was born. And in fear we live, afraid from our delusions, looking for something, trying to run and to find something that will fill us, fill this hunger, and trying to do it through the body, trying to do it through the mind, but knowing that everything that we have tried lasted for only a few minutes, and some of those few minutes have cost us weeks and months of investment of time and energy to find out that there was nothing there. And yet we can't break free. Why? Because when the mind brings it back to us, it brings us only the good remembrances, only the pleasant part. And it dances there like an annoying chicken, refusing to go away, refusing to leave you at peace, just chick, 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 tap, 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 click, cluck, 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 tapping away inside, presenting it over and over and over and over and over again, just there, really for one reason. The reason that it's there is to build your renunciation, to build your character, to give you back your strength that you've frittered away by dividing yourself into a body and into a mind, and then giving up all of the qualities of Satchitananda that make you beautiful, that make you valuable, that make you wonderful, that make you worthwhile. And when you find these things in yourself, when Madhusudana redeems you and brings you back to your senses, then you're the very embodiment of bliss, the very embodiment of peace, and all of that nagging hunger is gone in an instant. M remained spellbound as he listened to these hymns sung by Narendra. He said to himself, how intense Narendra's dispassion is. This is how he has infused the spirit of dispassion into the hearts of other brothers in the monastery. The very contact with them awakens in the hearts of the Master's householder devotees the desire for renunciation of woman and gold. Ah, how blessed are these all-renouncing brothers. Why has the Master kept us few in the world? Will he show us a way? Will he give us the spirit of renunciation? Or will he delude us with worldliness? This beautiful renunciation, this thing that M is wanting to long for. But as long as we look at renunciation as giving up, as long as we think that renunciation means letting go of something or losing something, it will never be the strength to us that it needs to be. Because what is renunciation? Renunciation is running to your mother. It's running to your lover at the airport after not seeing them for X amount of months or years, who knows. It's properly put as a running toward the greater and literally forgetting the lesser, leaving it behind you. So as long as you're looking behind you at all the things that are being left behind, your renunciation is going to be suffering because you haven't taken care of the one most important thing. And that is through discernment, knowing that there's nothing there. those things that you are leaving, that you are forcing from your fingers, are going to fall from your dead fingers anyway. All the things that you've accumulated, you're going to leave. Your renunciation will be perfect in this life, the moment your eyes close for the last time. Everything that you've loved, built, worked on, supported, cherished, enjoyed, gripped in deepest, embraces of love, gone. So it's not a matter of whether you will renounce or not. It's a matter of will you understand your renunciation and let it take you to bliss before it puts you in the grave. To where you understand that you're not leaving anything of value behind, that you're running to the beloved, the very source of everything you've loved, everything you've longed for, that you will have the fulfillment of all of your dreams if you can just stop looking over your shoulder at the things you're leaving behind and look forward to the greatness that you will have, the beauty that you will enjoy and find, discover, recognize. After the meal, all were resting. The elder Gopal was copying some songs, and Niranjan was on a visit to his mother. Sharat, Baburam, and Kali were in Puri. Narendra, with 1 or 2 brothers, left for Calcutta. He had to see to his lawsuit. He was going to return in the evening, and the brothers could not bear his absence. In the afternoon, Rabindra arrived, looking like a mad person. He was barefoot and had only half of his black-bordered cloth around his waist. His eyeballs were rolling like a madman. All asked him anxiously, "What's the matter?" Let me recover my breath," he said. "I shall tell you everything presently. I am certainly not going back home. I shall stay in this very place with you all. She is certainly a traitor. Let me tell you something, friends. For her sake I gave up my habit of drinking, which I had indulged in for 5 years. I have not taken a drop for the last 8 months. And she is a traitor." The brothers of the Mat said, Calm down. Calm down. How did you get here? How did you come?" Rabindra: "I have come barefoot all the way from Calcutta." The brothers asked him where he had lost the other half of his cloth. Rabindra: "When I was leaving her place, she began to pull at my cloth. That is how half of it was torn off." The brothers told him to bathe in the Ganges and to cool off, and then they would hear his story. Rabindra belonged to a respectful Kayascha family in Calcutta. He was 20 or 22 years old. He had first met Sri Ramakrishna at the Dakshineshwar temple and had received his special blessing. On one occasion, he had spent 3 nights with the Master. His disposition was very sweet, very tender, and the Master had loved him dearly. Once he had said to Rabindra, "You will have to wait some time. You have to go through a few more experiences. Nothing can be done now. You see, the police can't do much just when the robbers attack the house. When the plundering is almost over, the police make their arrests." So there's a little bit to understand in that, and kind of a beautiful arrangement, because you see, he's talking to who? Rabindranath sitting there talking to the beloved, talking to Ramakrishna, the direct manifestation of God. And the direct manifestation of God is telling you have to go through a few more experiences before you know the truth, before you know who you are. Now, there's a couple of things about that, because that's our condition exactly. We're here, we're going through a few more experiences. We're trying to work through a couple of more things. But the fact is, Thakur's already with us. We don't have to wait to enjoy the company of the beloved. We can anytime sit down, close our mind, speak the name, and be in the company of the divine, of God. To know that. And that name can stay with you as long as you want. That comfort of love can be with you as long as you want. Why? Because it's not conditioned by senses. It's not coming from the world around you. No love comes from the world. No satisfaction comes from the world. Which of you has satisfaction that you could hand to me? Which of you can hand me something called love, and how could I take it from you? Every experience you have had has not been out here. You don't even know of the existence of an out here. Every experience you have has been a reflection of what's going on in here. When you feel love, when you see somebody, has something passed from them to you? No. Something in here has awakened. Something in here heard its name. Something in here stirred, and we associated it with something out there. You see, every desire that you have, it's such a funny riddle. Everything out here that you think that you like, that you think that you want, that you think that you need, is like a little tiny mirrored decoration on a Christmas tree that's just reflecting you back. In it is a name of God. In everything you love and think that you need in this world is hidden a name of God. And discernment, discrimination, is going through and investigating that object of desire until you see the name of God and understand that it was not the object that was reflecting the name that you wanted. It was the memory of your divine spirit that you wanted, that you were reminded of for just a moment. That love that stirred within you, that wasn't given to you, could not possibly come from outside of you, was the image of the I Am. It was the whisper, the breath of God that breathes life into you every time you inhale. It was God herself. And for a moment you were aware. For a moment you saw. I had lunch with a Swami many, many, many years ago. It was probably almost 15 years now, up in San Francisco, and I think it was one of the Swamis from Belur, and I, being a great monk, can't remember his name at all. But we were sitting there, and I remember him saying to Swami Prabhutananda at the head of the table, he says, "Oh Maharaj, I've discovered something very important about desire." And of course Swami Prabhutananda was like, "Oh, what is this? What have you learned?" And he says, "Well, Maharaj, I've been thinking about it for much of my life." And he says, "I've come to understand what desire and the fulfillment of desire, what's really happening there." He says, quite often we think that when we fulfill a desire, that the bliss and happiness that we get from that is because the desire was fulfilled. And we think that the next time we fulfill that desire, we'll get that same bliss again. He says, but what I've come to realize is that joy does not come from the fulfillment of the desire. It comes because when you fulfill a desire, for a very brief amount of time afterward, you are without desire. And in that short period of time, and for some people, a microsecond of time, the mind is quiet. There is no desire. And what happens in a quiet mind without desire? That hum of bliss that is always there becomes apparent. And for just a moment you hear it. But then the next desire arises. And your mind is no longer looking at the peaceful calmness of the oneness that it knows by its nature, but it's again searching through the senses, finding something that it needs, that it wants, that will fill it up and make it full. And so we see here, that this is the nature of these things, and that here we are sitting in the room with Thakur, able to enjoy his company at any time, able to become aware of that hum of bliss within, that white noise of the divine, I call it, because all of this out here is so colorful, and especially up here, it's unbelievable, so beautiful. It's always calling you out of yourself to go and enjoy, to see, appreciate, it's beautiful, it's beautiful. But inside is a constant hum of contentedness, a constant hum of peace that passes understanding. But because it's a constant hum, doesn't move, doesn't change, doesn't wave its hands, doesn't flash, doesn't jump up and down and get giggly and excited to get you to come join the party, there's nothing there to grab your attention. And so once your attention leaves that inner self, the I Am, it's very hard to bring it back, because it's very hard to find, because it's not objectified. It's not outside of you, and it can only be found by implication. That implication is the same as saying it can only be found by not this, not this, not this. Taking your attention off of all the things external, all the things that can possibly be objectified, and feeling or being here and now without distraction. That is the end of spiritual life. That's the fulfillment of life. Rabindra had many virtues. He was devoted to God and to the service of the poor. He had many spiritual qualities, but he had walked into the snare of a prostitute. Now, suddenly, he had discovered that the woman was being unfaithful to him. Shocking, I know, that a prostitute would be unfaithful to this man. I'm sure. Isn't that a beautiful image there? Shocked that the world has not given us what we wanted. Shocked that the world has not fulfilled us. Shocked that we're hungry again after having eaten only a million meals by now. Shocked that we have to get up again and make a bed in the morning. It's like, this is the nature of it. This is the world. It goes in circles. Everything goes in circles, for goodness sake. What's the surprise when you find at the end of your life that all you've done is circled the sun 100 times? And that you're right back where you were when you started. What's the surprise in that? This prostitute of the material world cannot be true to you, cannot give you what you need. So he had discovered that this woman was being unfaithful to him. Therefore he had come to the Mat in his disheveled state, resolved not to go back to the world. A devotee accompanied Rabindra to the Ganges. It was his inmost desire that Rabindra's spiritual consciousness should be awakened in the company of these holy men. When Rabindra finished his bath, the devotee took him to the adjacent cremation ground, showed him the corpses lying about, and said, "The brothers of the Mat come here every now and then to meditate on God. It is a good place for meditation. Here one sees clearly that the world is impermanent." Rabindra sat down in the cremation ground to meditate, but he could not meditate long. His mind was restless. Rabindra and the devotee returned to the Mat. They went to the worship room to salute the deity. The devotee said to him, "The brothers of the Mat meditate in this room." Rabindra sat there to meditate, but he could not meditate long there either. Devotee: "How do you feel? Is your mind very restless? Is that why you have got up from your seat? Perhaps you could not concentrate well." Rabindra: "I am sure that I shall not go back to the world, but the mind is restless." M and Rabindra were talking. No one else was present. M was telling him stories from the life of Buddha. At that time, the members of the Mat regularly read the lives of Buddha and Chaitanya. M said to Rabindra that Buddha's spiritual consciousness was first awakened by hearing a song of some heavenly maidens. M sang the song. "We moan for rest, alas, but rest we can never find. We know not whence we come, nor where we float away. Time and again we tread this round of smiles and tears. In vain we pine to know whither our pathway leads, and why we play this empty play." Now there's some beautiful things here that are really well worth taking note of. One is this notion of a restless mind. It's interesting, the Bhagavatam, do you know where a restless mind comes from? Anybody? The restless mind comes from fulfilling desire. You see? Fulfilling your desires is contrary to fulfilling your desire. It's like it keeps this constant steady of fodder for the mind to present to you, to constantly bring you back to grabbing something that's going to run through your fingers as soon as you grab it. You know, by repeating that desire over and over and over again, one, you make it habitual. You can't get away from it. So when you try and stop, of course, the momentum is there. The mind's going to constantly keep trying to reach for it. Desire should be met not with fulfilling it, but desire should be met with discernment, with discrimination. Again, to look at that thing that you're wanting to run after, to look at it until you know what it is exactly that you're trying to get from that thing. And when you come up with the name of that thing that you're trying to get from that object, you will know that it's a spiritual thing of a spiritual nature. And you'll know that it comes only through the divinity within you. That object may reflect it to you, it may remind you of it, but that object is not the thing itself. It is not what you're longing for. Otherwise, you would just need it once and it would be finished. You wouldn't need it constantly, over and over and over again. This is the nature of the world, and it's one of the most important teachings to grow to understand, because in it is wisdom. To know that everything in this world is not lasting. Everything has an expiration date. Everything ultimately becomes potting soil. So that whether it's the car that you drive, the house that you live in, the clothes that you're wearing, the men and women that you've surrounded yourself in your life with, relationships and families, all of it becomes potting soil. Was it potting soil you intended to have? Was it potting soil you were searching for? If it was, then there might be some happiness there for you. If it's not, then stop it. Stop collecting potting soil. It's a terrible illness to have. It's a terrible delusion to suffer. So hear these words of these great men. Cry out to Madhusudana, to your beloved, to put your eyes on that eternal, infinite love that's within you. Find the beauty of yourself as a person, manifesting the divinity of God, manifesting that wonderful you that has been the subject of poems and songs and legends and scriptures for as long as we've been looking elsewhere. Anybody have any questions? Comments? A good challenge? A correction, maybe? All right, we'll end there for today. I'm going to do something I haven't done in a very long time. Let's just pray for a moment together. And if any words of my prayer aren't your words, change them, no worries. Beloved, how we hear the words of that devotee 100 years ago, 150 years ago now, describing our very life, the things, our longings, our desires, the things that nag us, our restless minds. As we learn the unfaithfulness of this world, its inability to give us what we need or what we want, we too are begging for that redemption. Mother, we too are just begging for a moment's awareness of you, for a moment in your company, to hear those words from you that will release every level of fear that we've ever had, to hear from you those words that will unlock the solution to our anxiety, to our confusion, to our insecurity, to our pains, and to our miseries. How long does it have to be, Ma? How much delusion do we have to entertain? Can it not be today, Ma?